Listen, I know why you clicked on this video, and it's probably because you don't want your shots looking like this. You want that sticky aim assist that everybody's been complaining about, and you want to be able to hit moving targets with ease. Well, you clicked on the right video, and today I'm going to show you how to get better aim and win more gunfights in Call of Duty Warzone using practical tips and things you've probably never heard before. This isn't going to be your typical video telling you just to use your rotational aim assist and change your settings, so stick around to the end and I guarantee you'll see a massive improvement very quickly. Now, I'm not a pro gamer by any means, but I've quickly doubled my KD by just following these steps carefully, and I want to help you get to a spot where you feel more confident in 1v1s and eventually taking down whole squads on a regular basis. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, we're gonna get all the boring stuff out of the way. There's some very key settings that you need to alter just to make sure before we get into like practicing and training that, you know, they're all kind of set at a baseline and that you have a good understanding of what they do, okay? So when you open up the controller settings, the first thing that we want to change is the dead zone inputs. And, you know, ignore all the videos you've seen in the past about, you know, oh, these are the best dead zone settings or whatever. This is completely different for everybody, right? Every single person is going to have a different dead zone setting, and the best way to test this is just hit the test stick dead zone button. So turn that on and you'll be able to see exactly. So this is me moving the left stick and this is me moving the right stick. You'll be able to see if there's any drift. Right now currently my controller does not have any drift, but if you find that your left stick is like this, that means you have some stick drift up and to the left. So on your left stick minimum, then when you turn that off, you just want to crank this up a little bit so that you that little red area there is where the stick does not activate. Okay, I've set mine down to 5 because if I put mine a little bit lower, sometimes I get like a little bit of stick drift, you see? So if it's down at 0, I get a little bit of drift. So I put mine at about 5 and I find that's a good sweet spot for me, okay? Now, same thing with right stick minimum. You don't want it too high because if it's too high, it takes you a long time to go ahead and activate your right stick, right? So if you're aiming and you want to make a precise movement, it's going to jerk heavy to the right or jerk heavy to the left or up and down or wherever. So keep it as low as possible without having any drift. Now, the only thing that I would recommend changing that a lot of people don't recommend is your left stick maximum. So this is the stick that you use for running around, right? You don't want to have to extend it all the way up in order to get into a full sprint. So I've actually put mine down to about 65. You can even go lower. I've seen people go down to about 50 because as soon as you tap it up a little bit, you're going to be in a full sprint. So the delay in order to start sprinting is a lot slower, a lot quicker. Now, next thing you're going to do is you're going to go into aiming and just adjust all your sensitivity to what your preference is, okay? So, for example, horizontal sensitivity and vertical sensitivity. These ones, most people like them matching. Some people like them a little bit different, but again, totally preference, and you need to try out and see which one works best for you. And then your ADS sensitivity multiplier. So your multiplier should be when you're aimed down sight, how much it slows down from the normal rate. So 1.0 would be it would move exactly as your, you know, for me it's a 9.9 sensitivity. Mine would move 20% slower than my 9.9 essentially, only when I'm aimed down sight. So the best way to test this, right now, you put on 9.9 for example, you know, as a baseline, and then you see this dummy here, right? I'm gonna go from the left and I'm gonna try and snap onto him. And if you're constantly short or constantly far, right? So if I go like this and snap and I'm constantly short or I'm constantly going overextending like this, that means that it's either too high or too low. So if I'm snapping too short every time, if I'm going like this and it's like ending up like this, that means I can crank up the sensitivity a little bit. And if I'm constantly overshooting it, that means you want to crank it down a little bit. Okay, so use the firing range. It's a completely free tool. You don't have to have the multiplayer or anything, and all my tips today are going to be without multiplayer usage. So I know a lot of people recommend going in and playing against bots. We're going to use a lot of firing range and plunder and things like that in order to test things out, okay? So again, with your sensitivity, if you're constantly undershooting, right, do this like 20 times, right? And if you're constantly undershooting, then you want to crank it up a little bit. And if you're constantly overshooting, you definitely want to crank it down, okay? So really simple, just like that. And play around with different things. Now, my recommendation is when you change your sensitivity, make sure, like I've changed mine to 9.9 recently, right? I've kind of float between 8 to 10 most of the time. But mine stays relatively around the 9.9 mark. If you try a new sensitivity, make sure that you're trying it out for at least a few games. Like I want to say like 4 to 5 games at least, because sometimes it just takes your muscle memory to get used to it. And if you just switch it to like, if I switch it to like 12-12, let's say, or something ridiculous, like my brain will adjust to this, right, as I'm playing, and it might take a few games in order to get to that point. And some people will change their sensitivity for like, one game, they'll die once and they'll be like, oh, I hate the sensitivity. Like that's not the case. You want to make sure you test it out and get acclimated to it before you make a judgment call. So it takes time, you want to really find that sweet spot for yourself and then kind of adjust from there. Now, the other thing that we want to change is the aim response curve type, and I highly recommend dynamic. Some people like linear, but it's a very small subset of people that use linear in their response curve type. Now, dynamic, what it does is that if you are, for example, looking at this bot here, okay, so if you're looking at this bot here, and you're aimed onto him, you're gonna have a slowed down rate, but if you're moving around like this, it's gonna go quickly. So it basically allows you to move quickly, but when you aim, it slows down quite a bit, right? So when you get near a target, you can have that snappy motion, but then it kind of slows down near the guy, right? So I like this best, whereas linear kind of stays the same the entire way, right? You get a more consistent movement curve, but there's no actual additional slowdown, for moving the right stick suddenly. Now, the third thing is, and this is, again, it's going to be total preference, is your aim assist type. Okay, now the two main ones that I would recommend playing around with is default and Black Ops. I would find 90% of people use default, but I've gotten so used to Black Ops, and personally, when I switch it to default, I don't actually notice much of a difference at all. Right, so I've left it on Black Ops just out of comfort, but like if I played on default, I don't think it would impact my my shooting at all. Right, and people will say, oh, use this over this. Personally, I haven't noticed a huge difference. Right, like truthfully, I don't actually notice any difference at all. But there has to be some sort of difference that people are, or the developers put it in the game for. So who knows? Who knows what the actual difference is? But personally, I don't notice it. My recommendation is go into the settings, try them both, and see what you like best. And if you get more kills using Black Ops, just keep it on Black Ops. If you get more on default, use default. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so now the next thing that you want to practice is this thing called centering. And I know you've heard this before. We're still going through some of the more boring stuff, but I'm going to have to go over this just as like a baseline for people who may not know or who just need a refresher on this sort of stuff, okay? So centering is, how a lot of people think that, streamers are hacking because they kind of always know where the guy is. And the truth is they don't actually know where the guy is. They're just kind of predicting, right? And, just through game sense and good centering, they have been able to kind of accurately predict where people are going to be or where people might show up from, okay? So let's pretend this thing is like a door here, right? Now, if I can't see, there's a guy there, okay? There's a guy right there. This is a door. Let's pretend this is wall and this is wall, okay? I don't know there's somebody there, but I know I'm about to run by a door, right? So I could actually run through this door here and then turn around and then aim. And that would be super slow and really inefficient. So what a lot of streamers will do is they'll center to that door. Okay, so they know they're coming to a door, they'll center, okay? They'll center. And they're always centering no matter what they're doing. So they go through this door, they're centering. And then there's another door there, so they'll turn around, they'll center, right? And they're constantly in a state of centering, right? Now, there's a few efficient ways to do this. People aren't going to go and center like this. That's a terrible way to center unless you really have to, okay? Unless you have no option to. But there's two different ways that you could do this, okay? The number one way is slide and center, okay? And this will give you like a momentum-based motion that makes it hard for people to hit you. Okay, so when you center this way, people are not expecting you to come sliding through, and your character is moving so fast that it's hard for them to actually, you know, if they're sitting here like aiming down on at that, it's hard for them to track that motion really efficiently. Okay, so when you're centering, center by sliding through everything. Okay, or we're gonna do the second way where you can actually jump center. Okay, now this is actually, funny enough, it's a little bit quicker. It's harder to track when you jump center as opposed to like a slide center like this. It's really hard for that guy to track me if I'm jumping around this corner, and it's even harder than if I slide. Now, the caveat for you is that when you slide center like this, right, it's easy to get on target for you. Okay, you can slide around the corner. You can even aim first and then pop up. So slide, aim, and then pop up like that. Or you can jump center. But when you slide center, it's really easy to do that. When you jump center, there's an actual delay. See, and the gun bobs up and down, right? So if I jump like this, there's a delay for the ADS, whereas when you slide, the ADS is really quick. Okay, so when you jump, a little delay for yourself, but it's a little quicker, as opposed to sliding where there's no delay, but it's easier for them to hit you. Okay, so you're gonna have to use this dynamically, and this just boils down to game sense. So if you're, playing games and you're in certain situations you're gonna want to slide through, in certain situations you're gonna want to jump through, right? And the gauge I use is typically if I'm full plates, right, and I know the person is aimed down that lane, right? So he's aiming down at this right now, and I have a feeling he's aiming down at that, right? I'm gonna go ahead and slide through because he's already pre-aimed. Right? So I don't want any sort of delay for me shooting. Whereas if, like I'm trying to catch somebody off guard and I know, okay, maybe there's a whole team through that door and they don't know I'm coming, right? Then I might go and do a jump, because then it's even easier to get out as well, right? When you're in a slide, it's harder to get back up and then get back into a slide. Where if you jump, then it's easier to go back into the slide motion and get out of there if you get pre-aimed or whatever. So again, two different motions, right? You can go slide through there, shoot at him. Or what you could do is you can jump through and then take shots through. Now, something I'd recommend doing for a lot of people, and this is something that a lot of streamers would recommend, and a lot of pro players actually do this quite a bit just to kind of train themselves, is just go into your settings and turn your aim assist off completely. Okay, and now go into firing range, go into multiplayer, go into any mode and try and just kill people. Okay, kill moving targets. This works best in plunder, I find. Okay, so just go into plunder, land in a really hot spot, turn off your aim assist, and then just go and like try and get some kills, right? Even if it's a few kills, get in a lot of gunfights, push everything, and just get used to playing with no aim assist. Okay, because without aim assist, it becomes really hard to hit your targets, and it really tunes your fine motor skills for your right thumbstick. When you're playing against, people in plunder who are moving around and sliding around, or in multiplayer, and you have no aim assist, it forces you to really actively think about those fine movements, and it helps you get that reflex tuned up. And then what you want to do is you want to go back into your settings and turn your aim assist back on. And now when you go back in, what you'll find is that because you've played without aim assist, now the aim assist feels extra sticky because you have a sense of what aim assist feels like with it off. Okay, so when you go back into a game, or when you go back into multiplayer, now when you're shooting at people, you're feeling that extra stickiness, and it's gonna really help you understand the full gravity of aim assist and how strong it can be. Okay, so the last of the baseline stuff that I want to talk about that you may already know, I'm not sure if you do or not, but if you don't know, there's two different types of aim assist. Okay, so if I'm aiming at this guy, there is a slowdown that happens, right? So, okay, I'm gonna have to do it on this side here. So when I'm aiming at this guy, there is a slowdown that happens as I get close to him. There's like a bubble around him. It's an invisible bubble. Okay, and as I'm aiming in, you see how fast I'm moving, and then it slows down. And I'm not slowing myself down at all. That's the game naturally slowing it down. Now that is just called your regular aim assist. Okay, so it slows down when you're near the target, so you can make those fine changes. Now the second type of aim assist is called rotational aim assist. Okay, so as this guy's moving, right? If I'm moving my left stick, you see I'm kind of staying on target, even though I'm not moving my right stick at all. It's kind of staying close to him, and it's essentially angling my character left and right to kind of match him basically. Now, the best way to use aim assist is both of these together. Okay, so if you're aiming at somebody, the last thing you want to do is stand still. Because if you're standing still, you're only activating one of your aim assist modes. The best way to do this is kind of move forward slightly or move left and right slightly, and this will basically lock you onto him so that when you're shooting at him, it'll essentially activate both aim assists at the same time. And I think this is where most people get confused, where they'll aim at somebody and then they'll lose them, or they'll make like a drastic change and then they've lost the enemy completely, right? So what you want to be doing is constantly strafing like this, right? If you're shooting a guy down there, constantly strafing left and right, moving forward, whatever you need to do to, you know, keep that second aim assist locked in as well. Now we're gonna get to the good stuff, okay? So this is stuff that like really helped me in my gunfights that a lot of people don't really talk about, and it's a lot of things that, like, you know, pro gamers and pro streamers, they'll do this thing, you know, subconsciously without knowing, and it comes with practice. But you know, if you have somebody explain it to you, I feel like you might actively think about it, and then it'll become second nature to you. So the first thing is it's basically like zooming in and out during a fight. So un-ADSing when you lose control. Because if I'm over here, right, if I'm looking at this guy and I zoom in here, right, and make a slight change to the right stick there, it'll essentially lock on mid zooming in, right? So basically ADSing reactivates your aim assist, okay? So if I'm aiming at this guy and I lose him a little bit, sometimes it's best to zoom out and then keep firing while you're zooming out and then zoom right back in, and it'll essentially lock you back on. So if you lose a target, if you're shooting at this guy and you're kind of like, your shots are going here, the best thing sometimes to do is zoom out and then zoom right back in while you're shooting. So I'm gonna show you how that works, okay? So I'm gonna go basically from shooting this guy to shooting this guy by zooming out and then in to lock onto this guy, okay? And it'll simulate essentially this guy moving from here to here. Because if this guy is moving from here to here, it's gonna be hard, and not a lot of the time, a lot of the times you're not gonna be able to track him the entire way, right? So you're gonna have to kind of start firing, zoom out, and then lock back in over there, okay? So basically zoom like that, okay? So you're basically, you know, if this guy was moving from here to here, the whole time I was zoomed out, I was laying shots into him, even if it's by hip fire, it's maybe 1 or 2 bullets, and then locking back in when by the time he gets there, okay? So you're going like that. So shoot, and then lock back in. And that actually, it brings me to another point where, you know, a lot of people will wait till they're zoomed in and locked in and then start firing. And that's, you know, it's definitely one of the worst ways that people die, because they're waiting for that perfect moment to shoot, okay? Now, earlier when we talked about centering, right, you're centering there, right? You should be, if I'm centering on that guy, I should be laying shots on him before I even, you know, kind of lock onto him. Right, so I should be laying shots into him and then locking into him. And this is a mistake I see a lot of people make. It's like the most common way I see people die is they had the guy, they saw him first, but they were just last to shoot, right? So when you go around here, you should be, as I'm ADSing, I should be firing. Okay, and I'll show you an example here. That way, you know, you're already laying, even if it's 1 or 2 shots, right? Sometimes you're losing those fights by like 1 or 2 bullets anyways, right? So always be firing before you even lock onto him, okay? So if you see a guy there, you don't aim down and then wait for him and then wait for your aim assist to lock in and then start firing. What you want to do, right, if I peek this corner here, I want to be firing and then aiming. And it'll essentially, like, as you're firing, it'll lock you on, and then you'll get the last few shots on it. So you're going from actually least precise to most precise, where I think that's where a lot of people mess up, is they're going precise and then they're trying to end with like a hip fire, which is, you know, it's not the best way to win the fight there. So again, you want to slide around the corner, start firing, or even just this guy popped out of nowhere. Let's see, he popped around a corner. Maybe he got the jump on you, okay, and he slid around that corner. You want to start firing and then lock on, okay? So he pops around the corner, you go boom. Okay, now another thing that I see a lot of people make the mistake of, right, is that they have, in the firing range, they have great aim. They can go there, they can hit these guys because these people are not firing back, right? And this is more of like it's less of a practical tip and more just advice for, you know, when you're holding the controller and how you're holding it and, you know, how your psyche is when you're fighting, right? Something that a lot of people forget is no matter how, you know, like rigid your thumbs are, right, or how, you know, stiff your trigger finger is, your bullets are going to fire at the same rate. If you press down on that trigger really hard, right, all you're doing is you're tensing up your hand, right? And what that means is when you tense up your hand, you're going to end up doing this because you're overthinking it and you're essentially like just you're making your movements really rigid. So really just try and practice, right? Go into like Plunder, or even if you're just playing with your friends, right, just put it in your head that, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna play really light on my fingers today. And that's how a lot of people play, right? Is they a lot of the pro players is their hands are really like light, you know. And if that means that you're, you know, with the palm of your hand where your palm makes contact with your hand, if that is really tense but then your thumbs get to stay really light, that's a really good way to you know, make sure that you have that fine motor skill here. Okay, so, you know, when you're aiming, try and keep light on your thumbsticks. Okay, so when you're aiming at this guy, right, don't be like, you know, making jagged motions like this. Think light with your thumbs. Try to have a really fluid motion with, like, you know, your fingers, and try not to like tense up at all. Okay, and people are firing at you back. The best way to practice this is actually in multiplayer because, you know, there's so much going on that if you're essentially like fighting people all the time, you want to get used to the feeling of being shot at, right? And if you find yourself flinching and then, you know, you're doing this a lot, you're gonna lose aim a lot of the time. So you need to practice, you know, getting into fights without like letting yourself tense up essentially. Okay, now this tip here, a lot of people don't realize, okay? Now, this is something that people don't, like, I don't even know if people know about this, right? This is such one of those tips that, like, even the most advanced players, I think there's a lot of people who do not realize this. But when you're getting in fights, right? Like, let's say you're fighting 2 or 3 people, okay? You're fighting this guy, right? People forget to reload. And, you know, like, it's a simple tip, but the reason I think it's really important is because let's say you're fighting this guy here, right? And then you have enough bullets. I have 25 bullets and there's one more guy, right? I could take this fight here, but if I miss a few shots, I'm out of bullets now, okay? So I've run out of bullets completely. Now, if you run out of bullets, the reload actually takes longer. So even if, let's watch this, okay? Even if I have 5 bullets left, okay, there is less of an animation to reloading than when I have 0 bullets left, okay? So watch the reload for 5 bullets remaining. Now watch the reload for 0 bullets remaining. You see that extra cock he does at the end? That is an added, you know, couple, or, you know, I don't know how long, but it's a couple milliseconds of added time to reload. So when you're fighting, even if you think you have enough bullets, sometimes the best thing to do is if you take down this guy and you think you have enough bullets, reload and reposition. Right? Because then you can do a quicker reload, you can get back into it quicker. This person's probably still chasing you, he's probably still in attack sprint, you can catch him off guard, and you'll be able to kind of take this guy out too. So before I wrap it up, last thing I'll say is definitely invest in a pair of those control freaks. They actually help out a lot with smoothing out your aim, and they're like relatively cheap. I'll leave a link in the description for an off-brand version that's you know, much cheaper than the branded stuff, and it's really all the same anyways. If you learned anything new, please consider liking the video and subscribing. I post settings videos, gameplays, and all sorts of Warzone related material. So it's the best way to show you support and keep up to date at the same time. If you think I missed any tips though, add it in the comment section because there's tons of tips that work for other people that I may not have covered today. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Mereka bangga angkat dagu, aku tetap jadi aku walau temu titik buntu. Jalanku berkelok namun fokus titik tuju. They say jangan jalan di jalanmu, namun kini mereka tiru jalan yang ku tempuh. Mereka ingin ikut tren, aku pilih jadi lilin. Walau ku terbakar, aku terangi yang lain. Kopi sampai best, lalu teriak I'm the best. Storytelling tiap bait bak nocturnal, tinggal puh best. Nilai pola pikir dikdaya tak kompleks. Why si rapper sombong yang stay di kompleks? Lirik busung lapar butuh kalori, tak perlu cara instan untuk penuhi.